Hello and welcome to the next round of the Go-Kart Championship in 2018. The next round of the championship comes from Bayford Meadows in Sittingbourne. Now this is a track that we visited once before in 2017. It was a track we all thoroughly enjoyed and we thought let's go back for 2018. So only 2 rounds to go after this one, so the championship is really hotting up. I'm in a pretty good position in the championship, but of course I want to try and extend that lead here today. So here's race number 1, a slightly weird session. We're sort of sent off like a practice session, so unfortunately no proper grid start. I asked, but unfortunately it wasn't allowed. So you can see, here we go. James W, who's the leading car, is the first person to go, and there's the 17 minutes on the clock straight away. Now I'm board my dad, who's just sitting behind Connor here, who goes now. I wish we were all sent off at the same time, but at the end of the day I didn't really mind. As long as I started last and I was able to sort of have a bit of a battle, I didn't really mind. I just thought it'd be very unfair if I started right at the front. But of course the people that go off early will be getting a big advantage here. So my dad out straight away, and he's going to overtake the 2 people that started in front of him, which were James W and Connor. Now I'm board with Tom. He's avoiding the big puddle in the middle of the track there. That's something that we're going to have to watch out for in this session here. And as you can see, it's sort of wet conditions here. So parts of the track are wet, parts of the track are starting to dry. But in general, at the start of this first race here, it was I'd say a wet track. It was a wet track. That's what they said, and that's why we're using the short layout of the track here. So you'll see later on that the layout changes. We don't go through sort of the second half of the lap. We sort of just go turn right straight away and go back onto the main straight here. And a good start here from John. He's overtaken Tom, who he started behind on the fictionary grid, and now he's going around the outside here. Good job there. Now back on board with myself here. I'm starting to overtake a few people here. I think this is around the outside of Paul I'm trying to get past. No. I'm going to try and get the undercut here as he goes for a spin there. Paul is Connor's brother. He's gone for a spin there at the last corner, which is quite tight and very, very wet and lots of dirt all over the place. And I've gone straight through that puddle there on the second lap of the race here. So a little bit squirrely under braking here, but you can see I'm quite quickly catching up to Tom. I was the last kart to leave. I think Tom was the 4th or 5th kart to leave, and John was, I think, the 6th kart to leave. So John's had a pretty good start here. My dad's out in the front of this race. He's doing a really good job leading so far, and I'm catching up to Tom here. This is for 3rd position in this race. So it's my dad, John, Tom and myself is the top 4 right now, and I'm going to try on the outside here of Tom. I slipped on the dirty part of the track, all the rubber and rubbish, and I've gone wide off the grass. I slide all over the place as I get back onto the track. Head down to the first corner and very sideways, very, very sideways, over the curb on the outside. It was to be expected. I had water all over my tyres, and I was lucky not to go off any further. I was kind of lucky that I managed to control it there, because that could have been a very big off there, but not what I wanted. I got wide in the last corner. I got on all the dirt and the rubbish, and unfortunately I just couldn't steer into the corner, and that sent me even further wide, and then I sort of got a bit of a twitch and ended up on the grass, unfortunately. So not the cleanest start of the race. John's gone for a slight slide there, and he's going to be trying to close down my dad here for the lead of this race. John's had a very good start here. He'll be happy with this. He said he was looking forward to this because he thought the conditions and the more powerful karts, the 270cc karts that we're using, should really play into his hand here. So he's hoping for a good result here today, and he's trying to close down for 2nd place in the championship to my dad, because Tom L has missed a couple of rounds, unfortunately for him, which means that he has lost a lot of time in the championship. He's lost a lot of points and positions. He's finished on the podium in every single race that he's done, Tom L, but unfortunately for him, he's missed 2 rounds so far at this point. He's going to be missing the next round as well, and unfortunately for him, it means that he's not really in championship contention this season. We saw last season he definitely was. So now through the last corner, Tom's gone wide and managed to slip down the inside. There was a bit of a gap, and we're through. So I was pretty happy with that overtake there, and you can see on board with Tom now and get the overtake done. We're both going around the outside there of James at the first corner. Now Tom is probably going to try and follow me here and keep up with me. I know he's quick around this track. He was very quick here last year. He managed to get a win here on the long track last year, so I know he's got pace around here. So it's going to be interesting to see whether he can replicate that here 1 year later. So now on board with John, he's really quickly catching up to my dad here. So he's had a fantastic start to this race, John. He's going to be buoyed with confidence here in the early stages of this race. What, about 5 minutes into this one? Well, actually only 4 minutes into this one. Now back on board with Tom. He's looking down the inside. Oh, he's gone for a spin there. I went wide, and then Tom, I don't know whether he just sort of hit the brakes a little bit too much in avoidance of me, or just sort of reacting to me. So Tom's gone for a spin. Back on board with John here. He's very quickly catching up to the back of my dad here. Really good job here from John. He's had a good start so far. And he's going around the outside of George there, and my dad's already got past him as well, and I'm coming to overtake George around the outside as well. It's close between George and John. I'm trying to get 2 in 1 here around the outside. I'm side by both of them right now, and then I see the yellow flag here, so I get out of it even though I'm on the dry line. I want to make sure I'm not involved in some sort of accident, and John has gone a bit wide there on the wet part of the track, and George has gone for a spin in front of us there, and basically everyone is now on the same straight here. Really interesting. On board my dad here, he's still leading this race, but this margin has come down so much here, so my dad leading this one. Is he going to be able to hold on to this? This is going to be an interesting lap here, whether he can hold on to it. It's coming out to the back of Paul here, and John is seeing a gap down the inside. He's gone for the move down the inside. John's gone for it. I followed him down the inside, both twitchy, as someone spins there in the middle of the track. I think that could have been Connor going for a spin in the middle of the track. So John now leads this race. I'm in second position. Third place goes to my dad, and now on board with Connor as Tom overtakes him there. So there we are. Connor unfortunately not having the greatest start to this race here, but he's not doing too badly. He's really just keeping it on the track, but as we saw, a little bit of a spin did cost him a bit of time there. So now on board with John, I've gone the move down the inside, but John, he's got the cutback. It's side by side into the first corner. I had the advantage around the outside. You could just see my Kart around the outside, but I didn't continue to go for it there. I wanted to make sure that no accident was caused. And George is coming up to try and get past Connor here. Is he going to go side by side? It's going to be close, but I don't think that was quite an overtake on there. So now on board myself, down the inside of John. He's left the door open. I've gone for it. I've gone wide on the exit, meaning I must have got the overtake done there. Now back on board with John. He's going to really be pushing here. He wants to try and get this lead back. He hasn't had a race victory in quite a long time. He's I don't know how many victories has John had. He's had 1 victory actually in his time in the championship so far. He's going to be looking to try and get another one, and this looks like a very good chance here. So if he can keep the pace up as Connor goes for a bit of a spin there, but if John can keep this pace up, I honestly feel there's a good chance here he could battle for the win in this one. So on board with George, he's starting to catch up to somebody here. I think this could be Paul. He's building up the speed here. And unfortunately, we were told that the go-kart cameras had to be placed on the actual go-kart, which was really frustrating because you see by the footage is not very good. And if we'd had the cameras on the helmet like we normally do, the footage would be 20, 30 times better. But unfortunately, we really were hampered by that. As Tom's gone for another half spin there, that's going to have lost him a little bit of time whilst he's catching my dad. It's a bit of an unfortunate mistake there for Tom, but he's got it going again. But maybe 10 seconds lost there, Tom. He will be a bit disappointed with that one. So, on board with my dad now. He can see John. He's not given up after he lost the lead this race. He's starting to pick up the pace once again, and he's trying to get past James here. And he's managed to get past him. A little bit of a hold up whilst James has learned the track. I should explain, James is completely new to go-karting. This was his first ever session. So, yeah, he was George's friend and he wanted to give it a go. And I really respect him for doing it, especially in these conditions. So much respect for him to just giving it a go. And he didn't do too shabby whatsoever. So, back on board myself here, leading this race. And I've got John not that far behind me, putting the pressure on. And I'm just trying my best to hit all the apexes. As you can see, whilst braking to the first proper braking zone, I really do start to get a bit sideways, and I enjoy it. I like the I don't know what's the right word. I just enjoy the fact that you don't exactly know what's going to happen here. And you can see I started to see about 10 minutes into this race, maybe a bit less. There's a dry line around the outside there, and I started using that. I really struggled with this last corner, as everyone did, because it was incredibly wet. The last corner is definitely the wettest part of this track. Now, back on board with Tom. This time he's done a really fantastic move down the inside of my dad there. He's managed to catch up to him quite quickly, so my dad must have had a pretty slow lap there for Tom to catch up that amount of time. But fair play to Tom. He's done a good job there, and he's closed up a lot of time, and he'll be happy with that one. So, into the braking zone once again. My dad's getting a bit sideways there. You can see Tom has got a good pace advantage there. He's gone quite wide through the first corner, but it's actually a line that's worked for him through there, and he's managed to do a pretty decent job of the gap. He's built a bit of a gap here with my dad in the opening half of this lap here, so it's going to be interesting to see if my dad going to catch up. No, he's gone too tight into that corner on the wet part of the track, and you just drift out wide and really lose quite a bunch of time. So both of them getting a bit squirrely through the last corner there. My dad does manage to close up to the back of him again, but not quite enough for an overtake. So on board with Connor. He's done this track a few times. He's actually done this track more times than anyone else, but he doesn't really take go-karting maybe as serious as the rest of his sisters. So as John goes past it to lap him, and goes past, I think that might have been James to lap him as well. John's doing a good job. You can see I'm not that far ahead, so if I make a mistake, there's a good chance here that John will take the lead of this race. So around the outside there of one, I think that's around the outside of Connor, and then down the inside of James. That's a really good lapping manoeuvre there from Tom. Great stuff. Really intelligent racing there to get the double overtake done. Now I overtake George, and interestingly enough here, I was wondering what was happening with George, because he was pretty much at a standstill there, and he actually stopped. You can see something really weird's going on with his go-kart here. This is like live footage from George's kart. It's just revving like crazy. Nobody seems to know what's happening, and unfortunately for George, he really lost a lot of time because of that. He firstly had to wait for the kart to be removed, and then he had to go and get another one here. So on board with Tom, he's managed to catch up to John here. John got a new visor for his helmet as well. He's saying he thinks it looks a bit better as well. It's helping him whilst he's racing into the last corner. Oh, a bit of contact as Tom hits the back of John. So John now powering away out of the last corner. He knows there's pressure from Tom here, and he knows there's a good chance here of getting second place in this race if he keeps his cool, and this could be some very valuable points for the championship. And there's a yellow flag out on track, and that is because George, just in front of us here, is being pushed by the safety car. And I was really lucky here because I wasn't caught up behind the safety car, and I wasn't caught up by the slow moving vehicle. And I don't really understand this, to be perfectly honest. I mean, there's obviously a logical reason for it, but I thought how it works on all the other tracks I do, they just bring out a new kart to you on the part of the track you are, and this seems to have just held up every single person in the lobby. Lobby? I guess you could call that. It's not an online racing game, but as John tries to overtake George around the outside, he gets a bit sideways, and really unfortunately for John, after all that, he waited behind them, he was patient, and unfortunately for John, he went for a spin trying to get past the cart that was getting removed. So that was really unfortunate for John. He was in a second position there, looking to get his best result in a very long time. And unfortunately for him, he's gone and lost it. So on board with Tom, who's in second place now. My dad's got up to third place, and John has dropped down to fourth place there. So really disappointing for John. He dropped all the way from second to fourth in one silly little mistake from there. So now on board myself here, you can see the sun is starting to come out, and I'm starting to push this a little bit further now. And you can see actually, I'm actually coming up to lap John here. That's how much time he lost through that spin and getting held up behind the cart that was getting removed here. So I look to the inside, John gives the space, and Connor's there as well, so I managed to get past both of them in one corner. I respect them both there for not fighting it too hard. I think John realised he was coming up to be lapped and didn't want to do anything too silly, and possibly he could learn a little bit from following me here. As you can see, he's just behind me here, and he's going to try and put in some good lap times. And yes, he's probably not going to be able to get past my dad here for third place, but it's a good chance to just see where I'm quick and not so quick, and see whether he can gain time. But unfortunately, he catches James right on the apex, or does he go around the outside here? No, he hasn't got quite enough speed to go around the outside, and then he's sort of second guessing what's happening. I would definitely say to John, I think he knows it himself, he just needs to be a little bit more decisive when lapping cars, because that's where he loses a bunch of time. You can be quick all the time, and this is on board footage with George, because he finally got out of his car and then switching over to another one, but he didn't actually have a place on his cart to put the camera, so he had to stuff it down his suit, so that's kind of funny. But yeah, that's George getting back in his new cart there, and unfortunately for him, he lost quite a lot of laps because of that. But yeah, to John, definitely the thing is being consistent and just being able to lap cars a bit quicker is definitely going to be helping him. So you can see there, George is back out on track. I'm going around the outside of him here. This is the first, I think, lap he's been back in his go-kart here, so he's going to be able to take it. Well, he's going to take a little bit of time, I'll say, to keep his cool and just make sure that he doesn't do anything too silly in these opening laps. The kart breaking down wasn't his fault, and just unfortunately for him, that's lost him a lot of time. And he was in actually fifth place, which is going to really help him out in the championship. But unfortunately for him, he really struggled, obviously, with the kart breaking down, and then he's really got a lot of time to gain, which is probably quite unlikely. So John coming up to lap George now as well. Is he going to go for the move down the inside? Yeah, you can hear that he's lifting off the throttle a lot earlier there, because I mean George is actually very good with his racing lines. It's just really about nailing the speed into each corner now. George has learnt a lot, and I'm not sure exactly what John's doing here. He's sort of just backing off behind him. He's losing a lot of time here. I'm not exactly sure what he's doing. He's sort of just rolling it through the corner. I'm not sure at this point whether he realised that he's not going to get anything better maybe than 4th place, so he was just trying to keep it cautious. But on board with Connor now. He's doing a good job. He, as it says there, is a Bayford expert. He's been to the Bayford track more than anyone else here. He lives nearby, so this is a track that he's been to a couple of times with friends and family, but he doesn't, as I said earlier on, he's not really in the championship in the way that the rest of us are. He doesn't really, you know, study footage and all that sort of stuff to make sure that he comes to a track and knows exactly what's going on. He really just turns up and has a bit of fun, which is completely what we want in the championship as well. So he's doing a good job here. He is actually now currently running in 5th place, and fair play to him. He's kept it on track. I mean, he had a little spin earlier, but he's kept it on track, unlike George, who obviously had the problem with the go-kart. He's managed to keep it on track, Connor. He's actually ahead of his brother as well, Paul, who's not that far behind him. But we're on board with Tom now. He's actually just coming up to try and get past Connor, and not quite able to get through there. A little bit of contact, I'm not sure, through that corner, but up to the start-finish line. Just over a minute remaining of this race now. On board with my dad here as I go through the last corner. He's gone a bit wide, and is that going to open up an opportunity for anyone else to get past? Down to the first corner. My dad's going to take the wide line into the corner. Is he going to hit the apex? He slightly misses it, but not too far off. Now down to, this is the hardest braking point here. So back on board me, I'm actually catching up to my dad here. I love this braking point, it's so fun. Just the car, the back end of the car getting a bit sideways and just hitting the braking point at the right moment is so important here. So on board with myself, we're trying to lap my dad here, who seems to switch overalls every single weekend. As I look down the inside, trying to be a bit cheeky there, I looked down the inside, that was the drying line down the inside there, but it didn't quite work out for me. And I'm not sure really what my dad was doing, but he did actually sort of let me through there. So now this is going on to the last lap of this race, and now we're back on board with Connor here, as I think this will be his last lap of the race as well, because it's technically timed as a practice session, not as a race session. So it's a bit weird with how it's working. My dad goes around the outside as well. I think that might have been James. But nonetheless, last lap of this racing, my dad trying to just see what racing lines I'm doing. I'm not going to lie, I was really happy with my times in this race. I was really surprised with how it was all working out. So there we are, there's the checker flag. Everyone's crossing the line there. Obviously John will be very disappointed with his race there. And up to the start-finish line. There we are, Connor's crossing line there as well. He'll be pretty happy with finishing 5th place in that race to pick up some points for the championship. Yes, he's not really in any sort of championship battle, but he'll be happy with the points that he gained in this race. So, time to look at the race results then. So I completed 22 laps in that first race there today. Tom was 29 seconds back. My dad was lapped, John was lapped, Connor was 3 laps down, Paul was 3 laps down, George was 6 laps down after, of course, having the problems with his go-kart. He was probably on course to finish in P5 in that race if we didn't have the problems with his go-kart. Then he was just ahead of his friend James, who did his first race, and shouldn't be ashamed, 7 laps down. But let's be honest, your first time on a go-kart, you're never going to be going flat out. So, fastest lap of that race went to myself. I did a 39.120, but realised the second race was inevitably going to be the one where the fastest laps were done, because the track was drying out at such a quick rate. So I needed to make sure I kept it up in the second race and had some good pace in that one as well. So this race is being started by the green flag. As soon as the green flag goes, we start this one. So, look to the left-hand side of your screen here. That is where the flag is going to go. I'm not sure why it's a flag, not the lights, because the lights are just above, but we'll go with the flag. I guess that's alright. So, the tension's building. quite a long way here. Here's the red flag, here's the green flag, and away we go on board with Tom here to start this race. Tom has had a slightly better start. It's very equal between myself and him as we go into the first corner. Tom's got the outside line, which will turn into the better line into the next corner. He gets into the slipstream. He's really getting a good run, and he's going all the way around the outside here. Fair play to Tom. That's a fantastic overtake. Very ballsy to go all the way around the outside there. I was defending the inside line because I thought that was the best thing to do, and unfortunately it didn't quite work out for me there. I didn't quite get what I wanted out of that opening exchange because unfortunately I lost a little bit of time there. And my dad staying in third place for now. He's got John right behind him. John knew he was quick in that first race. He sort of backed off quite significantly towards the end of the race, but he had so much pace in that race. I was a bit disappointed for him to finish fourth place because I think he had the pace to at least be third and maybe, just maybe, be able to have a battle for second place. So my dad's starting to lose a bit of ground to myself and Tom, who are starting to pull away in the lead of this one. I'm trying to keep the pressure on Tom here. Without being rude, I kind of knew I was faster by a decent amount, so I wanted to just stay calm and try and get the overtake in when there was a decent opportunity. So Tom goes through here. He's taken a pretty good line through there. He's very intelligent with his racing lines here. He knows exactly what he's doing, and he knew the last corner was one where I was gaining time in the first race because I managed to get through there by the end of the race in a pretty good line, but you can see I'm starting to catch up here, but I'm a bit wide on the exit there. Those curves on the outside aren't quite as vicious as they look, but I feel like I could have maybe gone a bit better through there. The first part of the lap I sort of messed up here. Looking to the inside of Tom here. I'm pushing him to the outside of the track for the next corner because he can't really turn to the corner whilst I'm there. So we're going side by side here. This is back on board with Tom. He goes back down the inside. I think he might have hit the water patch on the inside there and gone a bit wide. I'm back on board myself. We are leading this one once again, so I just sort of had to wait for a bit of a mistake, or just sort of put Tom's car on the wrong part of the track and then take advantage of it. So just forcing Tom to have to take a bit of a wider line through one of the corners meant that I managed to get through. It sort of all started a couple of corners before. Now on board with John, he knew redemption was available in the second race of the day here, but he's struggled in the start of this race here. He hasn't quite had the pace of my dad in the opening few minutes of this one, but he knows the pace is there. My dad gets very squirrely on the middle of the corner there, and John has really caught up here. And is he going to hit the apex? That's pretty good stuff right there from John. He's doing very good with his racing lines. He's improved so much over the 2 or so seasons he's been in the championship, and I'm really happy for him. And I've said to him as well, he just needs to lose a little bit of weight, and I think he's going to be so competitive, so I'm going to try and help him maybe with that in the future. But slipstream now, my dad, who also says he wants to lose a few kilos and to help him out in his go-kart maybe as well. They're really close here on track here as we're coming up to lap James. As John is going to get slightly stuck. Is he around the outside? No, he isn't. He's actually done better than my dad in overtaking, lapping James as they're close on track now. So John is doing a very fantastic job. He wasn't quick in the opening 2 or 3 minutes, but he's really started on a charge here. And he's looking down the inside. It's side by side. John couldn't quite do it. We can see my dad looks to the right hand side to see whether John's there, and unfortunately it doesn't happen. So on board with George, who goes for a spin, and you may notice he's got his camera on the helmet because he was a bit cheeky, and obviously after the last race where his car didn't have a GoPro mount, he kept it in his suit and then put the camera on his helmet at the start of the second race, which was a good idea. I mean, I really honestly would like to know the legitimate reason for not being able to have cameras on the helmet, because it does seem kind of silly, because I honestly feel that the footage from the helmet camera just looks a billion times better. This looks so cool, doesn't it? This looks so much better, and I think you know, as long as it's done at the owner's risk that the camera could fall off, I think that's fine. Surely. So on board with Connor, who's having a good start to this race. He's currently in P5. You saw that he was just ahead of George, who was going for a bit of a spin and losing a bit of time here. But Connor's coming up to lap James here, who is getting much quicker. I do have the time somewhere. I probably have misplaced them, but honestly, he was much, much quicker. Now on board with myself here. I'm trying to get past George to put him a lap on him. And now Tom, we can see, is starting to gain time here as he's catching up quite quickly here to Paul. It's all going on here. Is he going to get past Paul into turn 1? Yes, he is. Fantastic overtake there, and he gets past him quite smoothly. So I was battling with George there, and you can see now I have got past George. So George, unfortunately, not quite having the pace in the early stages of this one. He was keeping up with Connor, and I honestly think that George was the quicker driver, but he obviously had the problems with his go-kart, which meant that by the end of the session, when the track was its driest, he wasn't really able to push his kart because he only had a kart with cold tyres. So now my dad's looking to get past Paul here, and Paul's gone wide. My dad should go around the outside here, or is Paul going to come back at him? Still side by side into the last corner. My dad's got the inside line and he goes for the overtake. Fantastic job there. Now on board with John. He's trying to get past Paul as well now. Paul is sort of defending the inside line. I guess he's in his rights to do so, but maybe he should have realised that we were coming up to lap him here, and maybe it would have been nice to just let John through here, because there wasn't really in the same battle, so it wasn't really needed. So on board with Tom, we're lapping James here and coming up to the back of George here. George, once he's recovered from his spin, is actually doing quite well here. He's slowly starting to catch up to the back of Connor once again. Now, so on board with Tom. He's doing a good job through the last corner. Is he going to be able to go for the move into the first corner? George defends the inside line, so Tom's looking to go around the outside or maybe the inside, as there's contact on the exit of the corner, as George maybe didn't quite realise Tom was coming through, or maybe Tom didn't quite realise that the go-kart was so wide at the back there, because it was rear contact to the front of George's kart contact there. I think Tom maybe ran out a bit wider than he honestly thought he was going to through there, so it looked like a very robust and rude move, but I think it wasn't intended by Tom. He just probably didn't realise the kart's so big. The karts are, well, just generally, karts are bigger at the back than they are at the front. So that's just something that you learn in go-karting. So John struggling now to get past James, but he's got past him there. So good overtake around the outside, and he can't quite hit the apex, but into the last corner, slow it down, tight line. See, John's lines are pretty much absolutely perfect, but it's just the speed in the straight line where he's definitely losing time here, and maybe out of corners as well, because inherently if you're a bit heavier through the corners, you're going to struggle as well. And I went through quite a big transformation in terms of my body. I've got quite a lot thinner and lighter over the last few years. Good overtake there by Tom to lap Connor. But I've lost just over a quarter of my body weight in the last year and a half, and you definitely feel it in a go-kart, is all I'm saying. Going from 100 kilos to 73, it makes a huge difference in the go-karts, and I can finally race Tom, and I couldn't race Tom in the sort of 2016 season, start of 2017. He was just so much quicker than me in all areas, and then once I lost the weight, it makes it such a more level playing field here. So on board with my dad. He's putting the pressure on George now, and George has gone sideways, but he's kept it. I thought that might have been a spin there, but good job from George. He didn't completely lose it. It looked like that might have been a possibility there, but George is very good now. He's getting so much better, and it's really great to see. So I'm back on the lapping train here, trying to get past Paul here. I'm trying to go down the inside. Slightly questionable there. I was going to lap him, and then he pushed me on the grass. I don't know if that was completely on purpose or not, but slightly dodgy. Anyway, taking a wide line in here, because I know he's going to drift out wide. He drifted out wide, and there we are. Get the lap done eventually, but maybe a few corners later than it really needed to be. That's just the way karting and any sort of racing goes, I assume. So, down to the first corner. Nope, because we're back on board with John now, who's looking down the inside. I think this is of George. It's kind of hard to tell here. I think it was George, wasn't it? He's going to look to the outside. I think they're side by side right now. And no, he managed to get around the outside of him. So good job there from John. And it was George there who is just behind. He's sliding about, but he's learning so much. And that's really good to see from George. This is once again a new track for him. He did do the long layout of the track last year, but when you're much more of a novice go-karter like George is, it's a lot harder to learn a brand new track because you don't really have any sort of reference points about what normally a kart does. And he's only done maybe 6 races before that, and he's gone for another spin unfortunately there. But luckily it didn't lose him too much time here. But considering he needs some points in the championship to try and get ahead of Will, that'd be one goal. It's not been the greatest weekend for George. He probably would have gone in the weekend knowing he's the 5th fastest driver, just trying to secure those points. So now on board with Tom, he gets past Paul much simpler than I did, and closes the door quite simply. And 5 minutes of this race remaining. Am I going to be able to hold on to this race victory? Am I going to be able to make it a perfect race weekend, which will be a double race victory and points for fastest lap as well? Because as you have seen, no qualifying session. Just getting the words out finally. No qualifying session in this one, so that's the reason why the points are being given for the fastest lap, not the qualifying session. The fastest lap is normally counted and normally shown in the video, of course, but it's normally the pole position which gets you the points, but that's just the way it goes in some events because we don't get given the opportunity to do qualifying without paying a much higher price. So 4.5 minutes basically of this race remaining here. Tom's putting in some pretty consistent lines here. You can see he's learning this track very quickly and he's lapping much quicker than he was in the first session as well. It's going to be really interesting to see whether Tom can get those points for the fastest lap, which would really help him out if he does finish second place, because then it would narrow the gap that I managed to pull over him in this race weekend, because you get 15 points per race win, but then you also get 5 points for the fastest lap, and there's a 3-point gap between first and second. So if you do the maths, if I win both races but don't get the fastest lap and Tom finishes second and does get the fastest lap, there's only 1 point in it. 30 points for me and 29 points for Tom. That's how it would go. So back on board with myself here, not much of this race remaining as we've said, and we're trying to get down the inside of George here, and it's side by side. What's going to happen? First corner, I managed to brake a little bit later, or just lift off a little bit earlier than George, or lift a little bit later I suppose than George, and managed to get past him relatively cleanly, but it was a nice little drag race down to the first corner. So George, hopefully you can just take a bit of reference from the lines I'm taking here, and you can see he's not that far behind Connor. He can still get 5th place in this race. He's not that far behind. Come on George, you can close him down. Let's see whether he can do it. 3 minutes of this race remaining. He's not hitting the water on the inside. He's doing a good job. But is it going to be enough time? Is 3 minutes going to be enough time for him to close down Connor? So through the last corner and start another lap. But my dad here, he's not quite going to be close enough to try and take any opportunities from Tom if Tom makes any mistakes in this race here. He's dropped quite far back, but I'll tell you what, John, you can just see him on the right hand side of your screen there. He did make a few mistakes in the middle part of this race, which we haven't seen. We've been focusing on others, but John did make a couple of mistakes in the middle part of this race, as well as what we talked about earlier, getting stuck up behind lapped karts. He struggled to get past them as quickly as my dad did, and that lost him maybe about 5 seconds. But on board with my dad here, he's trying to get past Paul, who is looking one way than the next. Paul is doing a pretty good job here today. He's doing good at keeping on track, but John, he's definitely gaining from it here as my dad's trying to do these overtakes on Paul. He's losing time, and John is catching at quite a quick rate here, and they're getting past James at the same time here. Is John going to go around the outside of James? That would be a good move. No, I think he could have done that. But he's going to get the cut back around the last corner. Oh, he's lost a bit of time there as well, unfortunately, for John. It seems to have been a race day of what-ifs for John. I feel like he definitely could have been on the podium in both races here today, and I feel like he could have probably even been in the contention for the race victory in the first race if he had been able to get through lapped karts quicker in the early phases of the race. But that's still maybe the thing that John is lacking, is that the racecraft through traffic, I'd say. And I'm not saying this as Lewis Hamilton or whatever, just as a keen go-karter. That's maybe where John's losing time. You can see here once again, yes, Paul is going quite defensive here, which obviously is being making it very frustrating for John, but it's costing him a lot of time here, and I feel like he maybe should have got past him by now. But through the first corner, is John going to be able to get him into the braking zone as Paul sort of goes to the middle of the track when he doesn't need to? And this is a really good run from John. He's gone for the move down the inside. That's what we want to see, John. More of that in the future, please. That was a great lap there on Paul, and that's the sort of bold and ballsy overtakes you need to be doing when lapping cars, or karts I should say, because sometimes it can cost you 5 to 10 seconds getting past the slower kart, depending on which track it is, because obviously on tighter tracks you really lose time. So around the last corner, up to the start finish line, John's going to start another lap here, and someone's gone for a spin in the middle of the track, and Tom just about avoids them. That was nearly quite dodgy there, and this is coming up to the back of Connor here. Connor's doing a good job in this race. He's currently sitting P5. His local knowledge of the track's doing him well, and the local knowledge of the weather means that he's managing to keep it in 5th place ahead of George, which is probably unexpected, because let's be honest, George has had much more experience in go-karts and probably would have been expecting a double 5th place finish at least in this sessions here today. So Tom gets through. We're on the last lap of this race here. I'm still leading this one. I've got a nice lead, and I'm happy with the margin so far, as we're on board myself here around the last corner and then up to the start finish line. I take the win, and now it's interesting to see whether I take the points for the fastest lap. So on board with my dad. Tom's going to be crossing the finish line any second now. He's going to wrap up 2nd place in this race. On board with my dad. Is he going to be able to take 3rd place in this race here? There's someone stuck in the middle of the track. Oh, unfortunately it's James. I didn't rescue James, who was stuck in the middle of the track for a couple of laps there. So on board with my dad. He's catching up to George. John isn't quite close enough here to capitalise on it, which is really unfortunate for John. I feel like he had the opportunity here today, as we've said, to get a double 3rd place finish, but it wasn't to be. My dad finishes 3rd in this one. John finishes in 4th place. And 5th place, I think, is going to go to Connor, which I think he'll be quite happy with, because let's be honest, I don't think he would have really expected to get a double 5th place finish here today. But John will be disappointed after this one, as we've said. He knows within himself he was definitely the 3rd fastest driver here today, and unfortunately he let that sort of fall away from him there. So interestingly enough, I did manage to get the fastest lap of this race, as you can see there, but John was faster than my dad, which I think is definitely commendable, considering in the first race John was definitely slower. And here are the race results here for the 2nd race of the day at Bayford Meadows. I won with 23 laps on the board after a drying track helped me get an extra lap in this 2nd one. Tom was 16.878 seconds back. My dad was 35.916 seconds back. John, nearly a lap down, was 39.844 seconds back. Connor was 2 laps down, finishing just ahead of George, who was also 2 laps down. Paul had a slightly worse race than he did in the first one. He was 4 laps down and struggled a bit more for pace in the 2nd one. And James, unfortunately, after getting stuck on the curb right at the end of the race, finished 7 laps down. Unfortunately for him, that meant he lost a lot of time and wasn't able to secure as many laps. But James definitely improved in the 2nd one. I'd be really hopeful that he joins us again at go-karting. He's just such a great guy, and hopefully enjoyed it. I know it's a bit of a baptism of fire, everyone flying around him, but I think there's a talent there. We can see what happens. If he comes go-kart again, I'm giving him a few tips, and hopefully he can go quicker, and we can see the development in people like John and George over their time in the championship. So it'll be interesting to see with a few more rounds what will happen. So time to look at the standings, what's happened after this round at Bayford Meadows. I make it 3 wins in a row after my 3rd race win at Filching, or race 3 win at Filching. So I'm on 206 points now, which means it's not quite possible for me to be champion after Bayford Meadows. So there's still quite a lot of points up for grabs here. Still over 90 points available. Actually, I think it's 100 points available here in the final 2 rounds here. There'll be 45 points for race victories and 5 points for the fastest lap or pole position. So there's 100 points up for grabs. So the championship, whilst it looks a long shot, is still technically open for the top 3. And just outside, Tom, and sadly now, can't be the champion. So I am leading on 206 points. My dad is in 2nd position on 135. John is in 3rd place on 118. Tom is in 104 points, and that is in 4th position. Tom C is on 60 points. George is on 52 points. Will's on 47, so George managed to get past Will. Then it's Will's dad, James, Connor, Phil, Paul, and James is the championship standing so far. So really looking forward to seeing what happens in the final 2 rounds of the season. Brooklands is coming up for its 2nd time on the calendar this season. An interesting track, a very tricky little street track in a way. And then we've got the season finale, the good old Filching Manor, the one that started and ended every single season so far, comes back for its 3rd round of the season. So thank you for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. Please remember to drop a like on the video if you did enjoy it. Subscribe if you're new. Have a fantastic day. It's been Alex and I'm out here. Goodbye.